Hello everyone and welcome to Suzuka. Yes, back with another of our F124 Hotlap and setup guides. This time round we're here for the Japanese Grand Prix on what I think is truly one of F1's last old school circuits. The Japanese Grand Prix, obviously this track is just over 5 kilometers long, but is absolutely ruthless. There is no room for error, none of this fancy tarmac runoff area. You're either on the road or you're off at a gravel trap or an Armco barrier. When you get a lap hooked up round here, it is absolutely brilliant, but with that brutal nature, certainly makes this place very, very difficult. And of course, when you're setting up a car for races, you want to make sure that you are comfortable with what you've got underneath you, knowing that you have confidence to attack the S's in Sector 1, but also that you've got top speed in Sector 2 and Sector 3. Of course, as always, timestamps will be linked down in the description below if you just want to head to a certain part of this video. And as always, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you for the continued support. If you enjoy these, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed. We're doing daily uploads until we've got through all of the tracks inside F124. But yeah, let's head out then onto the circuit and see what you need to be looking for. Well, here we are then out on the Suzuka circuit. Of course, as you make your way out of the final right-hander, you're going to be all the way up in 8th gear on your way down towards Turn 1. Now, of course, like I said, this track feels like you have to compromise your setup in one way or another. So we've mainly aimed for having a little bit more top speed around this venue. Just as you get to this little grey strip on the outside, as you move past that, you're going to try and turn your way in towards Turn 1 there. Now, Suzuka, I've said it a lot already in this series, but when I say it here, I mean it more than anywhere else. I don't think, with the exception of Degner 1, there is a single apex curb that you want to take around this place. They are all lethal, so you've got to be really, really careful. Through the first corner, you're basically, as you get towards the end of the curb, going to come off the throttle and then start going down the gears. In qualifying trim, you'll be able to leave the car in 5th, but in races for a little extra front rotation, I would say use 4th gear there. Be really, really gentle as you try and get towards the exit. Short sit back into 5th gear as you use that as you go past that curb, and then use the circuit runoff on the outside there. Avoid the grass on the exit, and you might be just up into 6th gear as you make your way into the S's. Now, my favourite way of explaining these S's is always a story that Sebastian Vettel gave. When he was racing around here, I believe it was 2010, he was struggling to find a way through that he felt really worked, so he went to kind of his German, more experienced rival and obviously friend and really advisor in Formula 1, of course, the great Michael Schumacher, and basically asked Michael, what do you do to try and go through these corners quickly? And Michael basically said there's no exact science to it. You just got to go through in a way that feels quick to you. So 6th gear through the first part, I find the best way to go. And then just as you get ready to flick the car back over to the right-hand side, I'm going down to the 5th gear in race trim and basically leaving it in 5th right the way through the rest of these S's there. You've got to be careful. This left-hander actually feels a little bit sharper than I ever expect it to, especially as the front end is trying to push out. And the same for this final right as well. Then really, really important that you don't let the car run too wide through here. Otherwise, you're going to ruin your run through Dunlop. I'll be honest, if you're pushing out too far wide, go down to 4th gear. It is worth it there. But you should be back into 5th by the time you make your way through Dunlop corner. Of course, this corner, I made mistakes around here already on this game. You've got to be so, so careful of running out wide on the exit because it is curb or it is gravel, and you're going to be going for a spin if you find your way out there. Honestly, with the amount of downforce you've got on this year's game, it shouldn't be as much of a problem unless you're on absolutely ruined tyres there. But up into 6th gear you go. You want to be making sure you try and keep this run as short as possible, so hug the apex on the left-hand side. Now you make your way in towards the first Degner. You're going to be up in 7th gear by the time you approach there. Turning just after the 50-meter board. Like I said, this is one of the only apex curbs you can attack on this game, but try and get the car straightened up before you go on the outside of the exit there. Of course, setting yourself up for the second Degner. That first one, again, unless your tyres are absolutely wrecked, completely pinned. Full throttle. I've done it in a Haas, I think it was, on completely worn out hard compound tyres as well. It's ridiculous, the amount of grip you've got through there. But you want to try and get the car back down into 4th gear on the exit. This curb on the inside will send you into a spin every single time, so avoid it like the plague. even use third gear if you're struggling a little bit, but you ideally want to be in fourth there as you try and flatten out the car over the curbs on the exit. You've got to be really, really careful on the throttle there using that exit curb, otherwise it will spin you around all the way up to sixth. Before you get yourself into the hairpin, I'm actually leaving it in sixth gear, even in qualifying trim. Make sure you got the car over on the right-hand side. Bring it all the way down into third gear, and just as you tip the car in, I'm going down into second to try and glide the car through the hairpin. Really, really difficult, actually, for how much traction you have on this game. The hairpin is a really, really difficult corner to try and put the power down without ending up with some oversteer there. So you can short shift back into third, but once you've already got the throttle down, otherwise you're just going to have no power on the exit of the corner. Making your way down in towards the infamous spoon turn. Next, you want to keep the car over on the right-hand side. You're going to be all the way up in 7th gear on the way in. As you reach the 50-meter board, down 1 gear, flick it in, of course. In qualifying trim, you should only need to blend the throttle. In race trim, you're going to have to downshift once, and then all the way down to the 4th gear for the second part of the corner as it really starts to tighten up. Get on that throttle just as you go past the curbing, and use all of this exit as well to give yourself the best run out onto this straight. Now, I don't actually try to go right down to the white line there, because it's very, very bumpy, so I actually just aim to go across that East Circuit grid, and then all the way up to 8th gear for the infamous 130R. Admittedly, not much of a challenge in modern Formula 1 games. You basically are just trying to get through here and setting yourself up for the Casio triangle, so I don't even use all of the outside. I try and keep the car over on the left, and then you want to be aiming once again for the 100-meter board. They're braking just as you reach that, all the way down into 2nd gear. Third if you're feeling really confident, but I would say 2nd so you get the run on the exit. The curbs through here can be awful. So honestly, I find in race trim it's better just to avoid them completely. But you'll notice obviously over 1 lap, you can actually try and mount them when you've got the extra grip. Short it back into 3rd gear. Really try and clip the end of that curbing. Be careful of the oversteer so you don't hit the inside wall. Hug the car over to the right-hand side for the shortest run to the line. And that is going to be a lap then of the Suzuka circuit. It is a really, really difficult one here. It is notoriously tough to try and get a lap hooked up. It will take a lot of practice to get up to speed and to get comfortable here. But let's head back to the garage and take a look at the setup. You can see then, taking a look back in the garage, we were about 1.5 seconds, just under, off of the top times in the world. But like I said, you know, these setups are just designed for races. If you want to go into time trial and run some quick times, I would say just download one of the top times in the world. For this one, I used my old friend Cedric Tome's setup and obviously just altered it massively ready for this video there. But you can see as we go in, 33.30 on the aerodynamics. It's a lot lower than you're going to see in time trial, but I find that it gives you a good balance of confidence still through the S's, but gives you enough straight line speed as well. Only the 1 DRS zone around this track, so you've really got to make sure that you've got a car that you can make overtakes as well, because the last thing you want to do is end up side by side with someone down in towards turn 1. 40, 45 on the differential, and then 30 on the engine braking. Again, as always, 30 on the engine brake is just what I find works on this game. But again, obviously, especially through the S's, you want to make sure that both those wheels can spin up a little bit independently. But obviously, through the hairpin, you really want to try and have a stable back end. So trying to make sure that obviously you've got the grip there, of course. A more locked differential is going to provide that little bit more grip in those straight line acceleration zones. But through the S's, you need it unlocked a bit more. So 40-45 is what I have found works around this venue. Minus 3.2, minus 1.9, 0.08 and 0.07. It's pretty ballpark with what I seem to find works for me inside F1 24. And again, kind of provides a good balance between making sure that your tyres don't overheat, but also obviously making sure that you've got enough rotation to get through the corners as well there. Suspension, we've got 27-13 for those. Of course, as always, you want a much firmer front, than rear suspension. The anti-roll bars are running pretty neutral at 12 and 10, and then actually around here, you want quite a high ride height, otherwise you're going to find yourself just shaking to pieces over the bumps down through the back end of the lap. It is a bumpy circuit, Suzuka, even after they removed the bump at the final corner a couple of years ago there. So 28.62 on the ride height. If you find that still too low, I would say maybe look at going up to 30.65, and then really after that, if you need to go much higher than that, I would basically just be trying to do it all at the rear end. Otherwise, you're just going to have understeer through the first sector there. 97.54. It's the brake bias I use everywhere on this game. It works for me. As I've said, this one is much more about just fine-tuning and finding out what works for you. So go through and obviously check it out for yourself there. And tyres, then we want 24.7 on the fronts and 21.8 on the rears. Higher tyre pressure is going to mean that the tyres are less likely to overheat, and around a track like Suzuka, it can become a bit of a problem, and if you find that the tyres are overheating, you are going to be in big trouble here. The wear as well is quite high. It's going to be a one-stop strategy. Mediums to hards is going to be the way to go. I would not say the soft tyres are going to be particularly race viable around this circuit, but there we go then. That's going to be a setup guide here for Suzuka. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed as well. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow for Shanghai.